Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Elko, the Texas A&M Aggies, continue to roll on the recruiting trail, landing another commitment in the 2025 class from four-star offensive lineman Jonte Newman from the state of Texas. Two things that really jump off the paper kind of immediately when you talk about Texas A&M and what they've been doing on the recruiting trail. I think the first thing is Mike Elko prioritizing the offensive line in this 2025 class. And I mean, this is massive. If you're a Texas A&M fan, we talk about this a lot. It is very easy to address a lot of different positions in the transfer portal. That one position that is not very easy to address is the offensive line. There are a lot of Power 5 programs looking for starting caliber offensive linemen in the transfer portal. And why do we talk about that? It's because it's so important to recruit your offensive linemen from the high school ranks. And you take a look at mid-April in this 2025 cycle, Texas A&M already 4 offensive linemen locked in this 2025 class. That's really big from a roster construction standpoint. The second thing that really jumps off the screen is you kind of getting a feel and a vibe for what kind of offensive lineman Coach Cushing and Mike Elko are really prioritizing on the recruiting trail, and that's the athletes, right? There are always kind of two types of offensive linemen coming from the high school ranks. One, the really, really big, imposing offensive linemen that probably carry a little bit of bad weight. Then the second one is maybe the undersized offensive linemen, but the really good athletes. And those are the guys that Mike Elko, Adam Cushing are going after. You know you can put the weight on these kids as they get into this Texas A&M program, but you kind of get to control what that weight looks like and how that body looks. And I think that's a really good process for Mike Elko and Texas A&M. Jonte Newman, a guy that I think gives you a lot of position versatility, plays left tackle at the high school level, probably could play guard at the college level, but also I think a good enough athlete to play tackle as well. Want to get into the film, talk a little bit about what Jonte Newman brings to the table. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. Massive shout out to the Texas A&M fans. As always, y'all know that I have had an absolute blast covering this team on the recruiting trail in the transfer portal since Mike Elko has taken over. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. To the Texas A&M fans, I'm sorry we're a little late on this commitment. Was watching the Olympic trials for wrestling Friday night, so didn't get a chance to talk about it Friday night, but early Saturday morning, we're getting to it. And without further ado, let's get into Jonte Newman. I think the first thing that stands out is, I mean, just like Marcus Garcia, just like Connor Carty, guys that we've talked about the last couple of weeks, Jonte Newman also has that track and field shot put discus background, and you see that manifest itself on the football field. Phenomenal athlete, extremely explosive in that lower body. But the thing that stands out to me is the functional core strength, the ability to really dominate opposing defenders from an upper body standpoint. That's what really stands out. And we see a lot of offensive linemen coming from the high school level with kind of underdeveloped cores and not really there yet. Jonte Newman's a guy that when you turn on the film, his ability to really manhandle from an upper body standpoint, opposing defensive linemen, that's kind of what stands out. And as you get to the film, a couple things that really jump out. I think the first thing when you turn it on is really good at working to the second level, right? And then he putting a hat on a hat. But more importantly, you see that upper body core strength just absolutely putting defenders into the turf. Does it a lot of different ways. He'll do it in pass protection as well. Really strong hands. Again, just kind of from an upper body standpoint, dominating opposing defenders, knows how to use that upper body core strength. You see really good athleticism too in terms of dealing with more of a juiced up edge rusher on this rep. Really comfortable in terms of just mirroring edge rushers and putting hands on them. Does a really good job as well working to the second level. Probably not as dominant off the line of scrimmage from an explosive power standpoint from a guy like Connor Carty or Marcus Garcia. But what's rare is, I mean, at 6'4", 280 pounds, Jonte Newman is extremely comfortable pulling around to that play side, working up to second level defenders, really moves clean in space. And again, that's something that you don't always see from these high school offensive linemen. You see the big bodies, you don't necessarily see the athleticism. Jonte Newman is a superior athlete for that size. And again, that's something that Mike Elko is really starting to covet on the recruiting trail. We're kind of getting a feel for the kind of offensive lineman that Mike Elko is going after. You see a little down block, just moving bodies. Don't get it twisted. He is very explosive, can move bodies himself. But I think the thing that stands out to me the most is what he does in space, whether it's pass protection, again, just mirroring defenders, putting them in the dirt with that upper body, seems so coordinated and in control of his movement patterns for a guy that's 6'4", 275 pounds. And I think that's the thing that stands out to me the most. Again, excuse me, really good pulling, play side, working up to second levels, consistently meet second level defenders. And again, that's something you don't see a lot of high school offensive linemen do a very good job of. I think that's a really good example of that core strength as well. And you take a look at Texas A&M in this 2025 class, few things that stand out. One, you got your quarterback of the future in Hassan Longstreet. We talked about him last week, and that is the quarterback that, if we talk about Mike Elko having a lot of success during his tenure early on in this process for Texas A&M, I think it's going to come with Hassan Longstreet. And that's not necessarily me knocking some of the other quarterbacks that Texas A&M has coming into this roster. I look at Hassan Longstreet and say, this is one of those special kind of quarterbacks that I think is going to win a lot of football games at the SEC level. But you scroll down and say, all right, we got our quarterback in Hassan Longstreet. Now we got to make sure we're protecting him. Jonte Newman, Marcus Garcia, Connor Carty. You take a look at this offensive line, two things that stand out. One, all really good athletes. Two, a lot of them have that position versatility, right? Connor Carty, I think, probably a for surefire interior offensive lineman. You look at Marcus Garcia and Jonte Newman, two guys that I think could play tackle, think could play guard. And you talk about building depth on that offensive line, trying to get your best five offensive linemen out on the field, having guys that you can move all around the line of scrimmage to all four of those different spots. That's massive. Jonte Newman, Marcus Garcia kind of represent that position versatility that I think Mike Elko is really coveting on the recruiting trail. Big fan of what Texas A&M is doing in this 2025 class. Seemingly probably take one more offensive lineman. We talk about early April, having your offensive line class already locked in. That's massive for this Texas A&M program. You guys see what they have on campus every single weekend. The offensive skill certainly going to come. Having Hassan Longstreet already locked in, that certainly helps. Another massive commitment for Texas A&M. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. Wanted to hop on, give you guys some of my thoughts on Jonte Newman. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.